Thank you. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting, November 13, 2017. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any announcements of upcoming events in town? Tom?
I do. Lois Levine will lead the Abington Garden Club in a Holiday Greens Fair workshop at noon on November 20th at the Parish Hall of the United Church of Christ, 10 Bedford Street, Abington. The meeting will begin with a luncheon hosted by Shirley Hill, followed by the workshop.
Thank you. Alex?
I'm going to read the proclamation for Veterans Day, which we did not have a chance to do on Saturday, so if I may. A Veterans Day proclamation in honor of all who have served in the United States military. Whereas November 11, 2017 marks the national observance of Veterans Day in the United States. Whereas the day was originally commemorated as Armistice Day on November 11, 1919, to recognize the armistice between Germany and the Allied nations that went into effect on November 11, 1918, and the heroism of those who died. Whereas Armistice Day became a legal holiday in 1938, intending to honor veterans of World War I. Whereas on June 1st, 1954, Congress changed Armistice Day to Veterans Day to honor, at the urging of veterans, to honor all American veterans. Resolved that the Board of Selectmen and the citizens of the town of Abington hereby extend their respect and gratitude to all military personnel who served in the United States in all wars, recognizing those who have returned from war as well as those who are still missing and those still held as prisoner of war, and those who have made the supreme sacrifice. The Abington Board of Selectmen, Ken Coyle, Andy Burbine, Alex Bazantin, Robert Manning, and Tom Conley.
Thank you. Bob?
Just a reminder, this is the week where we're picking up leaves and small twigs during your trash this week, from Tuesday through Friday this week. It started today, although the weather wasn't cooperating too much today as far as gathering that, but if you put your bags out, it was collected with your normal trash this week, so Monday through Friday, you'll be able to have your leaves and grass clippings picked up in paper bags or barrels. Please, no plastic. Again, we're trying to not bring plastic into the landfill. We don't mind plastic, but we're just trying not to put plastic in the landfill. And just a reminder that I'm not sure exactly what day that will close for the year, but I would strongly ask that if you miss this week's leaf collection and grass clipping collection, that please call the town hall to make sure the landfill is still open, and make sure that you don't dump your leaf bags in front of the gates if it's closed. It just makes a lot of work for the rest of us who work the gates that we have to bring it in. Please hold on to them for the spring collection if possible, if we miss it, but I believe it'll be open for at least 1 or 2 more weeks, but please call the town hall if you're unsure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to remind everyone about Abington Celebrates, the 2nd annual Christmas at Island Grove. If you recall, last year we had the lighting of the Christmas tree, and although it was very cold, everybody had a great time. So this year the Abington Celebrates group is going to have a weekend of events. Quickly, I'll touch upon a few of them. Friday evening, December 8th, Ugly Sweater Ball, hosted by the Abington Lions Club at the American Legion. Breakfast with Santa by the Friends of Abington Seniors at the Abington Senior Center on Saturday, December 9th from 8 to 11. Then Saturday night, 4 to 7, Christmas at Island Grove, lighting the Christmas tree, storytelling by local author Michelle Christian, cookies with Mrs. Claus in the cabin, caroling, refreshments, and of course, Santa. Sunday, October 10th, from 11 to 2 at Happy Dog. The Abington Dog Park Committee is having a fundraiser with photos of your pet. And lastly, a new event this year, the Abington Christmas Concert on Sunday, October 10th, 4 to 5 at the United Church of Christ. The finale of Abington Celebrates Christmas Weekend is concert by Abington Christmas Choir, along with special guests Katie Beckvold, Wally Cunningham on trumpet, and Dr. Michael Francis Smith to sing excerpts from a Christmas cantata in which he wrote. So thank you. That's going to be a great event. Our first meeting, public appointment, is at 6:35, a joint meeting with the Board of Assessors. Jack, would you like to come up? And this is a vote that the board takes every year on the tax classification. Thank you.
I'm Jack Pistorino, the Deputy Assessor of the Town of Abington. I'm here with the Chairperson of the Board, Kate Platty. We'll get started. Every year, those present at our annual town meeting vote to approve the upcoming budget figures. The money to fund the budget comes from multiple sources like local receipts, revenues, and state aid. The remaining money comes from the levy. The levy refers to the amount of money that the community can raise through real estate and personal property taxes. The classification hearing does not change the amount of money which can be raised via the levy. A split rate will not increase the revenue for the town. A split rate shifts some of the tax burden from all residential properties onto commercial, industrial, and personal property accounts. Since you need to raise a fixed levy amount, the valuation for the tax rates move in opposite directions. If the total town value increases, the tax rate will decrease. If the total town's value decreases, the tax rate will increase. However, if overrides, capital exclusions, or debt exclusions are approved, it is likely the tax rate will increase no matter what. This is an overview of our debt schedule for fiscal year 18. As you can see, for fiscal year 18, our debt will be a little bit over $4.1 million compared to fiscal year 17, which was a little bit over $4.3 million. This is the remaining debt that we have for the town. Just to bring up the CPA, so it's not confusing to anyone, the CPA does not increase the tax rate. It is a separate surcharge. It does not go towards the payment of your real estate tax bills or the general fund. For fiscal year 17, the town collected approximately $350,000 in CPA funds. The Board of Selectmen hold classification hearing each year to determine if the levy gets divided evenly via a single tax rate or if the tax burden gets shifted between the classes. This slide shows the percentage of classes. For residential, we have a little bit over 87%. For commercial, 9.7%. For industrial, a little bit under 1%. And for personal property, a little bit over 2%. The historical class percentages. As you can see throughout the years, percentages have really stayed the same. In fact, going back, looking at the Department of Revenue stats from 81 on, it's trended the same throughout the years. So our percentages have been the same throughout the years. The LA7 shift. Should the selectmen choose to shift some of the burden to the commercial, industrial, and personal property, the shift may not be more than 150% of the original burden. Given this restriction, our minimum residential share with the maximum shift is a little bit over 81%. And our maximum commercial, industrial, and personal property share with the max shift is a little bit under 19%. For fiscal year 18, for a single tax rate, it looks like it's going to be $17.83. The bottom chart shows that at a maximum allowable limit, for residential, at the maximum split rate, it would be $16.54. Commercial would be $26.74. In FY17, the tax rate was $18.35. The proposed FY18 tax rate is $17.83, which is a 52-cent decrease. The current value of the average single-family home is $343,000. The taxes would be a little bit over $6,000. Currently, 61% of all single-family homes are valued at or below the average. The current value of the average commercial property is $871,000. The taxes would be $15,500. And currently 77% of all the commercial properties are valued under $1 million. This is the impact of the tax shift. We have it in 5% increments. Like I said, for a single tax rate, it would be $17.83 for both commercial and residential. If we look down the chart at, say, 0.25, the residential tax rate would be $17.18. The residential difference would be a minus $223. Compared to commercial, the tax rate would be $22.28 for a commercial difference of an increase of $3,800. And again, the max shift down the bottom, like I indicated, the residential would be $1,654, a savings of $442, compared to a commercial tax rate of $2,674 of an increase of $7,700. As you can see with this shift, the highest shift would result in commercial paying approximately 50% more in taxes, while residential parcels would save just over 7%. Some split rate information here. For fiscal year 17, 115 communities had a split tax rate. 95 of those communities have split the rate for more than 10 years. 84% have split the tax rate for more than 25 years. The average residential percentage for a split rate community is 69%. The average residential percentage for a single tax rate town is 88%. Of the 27 cities and towns in Plymouth County, 5 have a split tax rate. The average residential percentage of those 5 communities is a little bit over 71%. When determining values, we are governed by the Department of Revenue regulations. We must analyze qualified sales from the last full calendar year and adjust accordingly. For fiscal year 18 values, we must use sales from calendar year 2016. Property values get adjusted after the sales analysis. Property values are submitted and certified by the Department of Revenue. Property values may change as a result of building permit visits, sales inspections, random selections, or the Department of Revenue requirements to visit the property at least once in a 9-year period. In closing, the Board of Assessors voted at our last meeting to recommend the Board of Selectmen adopt a single tax rate.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Board members have any questions for Jack?
Just a quick review on outstanding debts over the years.
Yep.
Is that 100% made up of our bond debt only, or is that any other debt included in that?
This is, all the debt that we have is the bonds right now that are showing. There's small bonding, as you would say, but that's the treasurer collector's field. It's not really the assessor's field. Why I showed the debt schedule is because you have your levy that you have to, for Proposition 2.5, you have your levy, you have your Prop 2.5, then you have your new growth that goes into it. But the main thing that increases the tax rate as well is the debt itself. So that's why I do show that slide.
Okay.
But I believe, Bob, there are some smaller banding, as you would say.
Right, okay, just wanted to, just for a clarification purpose, so people understood what that meant.
This is the
That's all.
majority of the debt that goes on to the levy.
Okay.
Questions? Will the 52-cent decrease in taxes, will people actually see a savings, or the value is gonna go up?
Well, that's why, like I indicated in one of the slides, when values go up, the tax rate does go down. But it has a lot to do with the debt. So last year it went up because we had much more debt than the prior year. So not really. You always have Prop 2.5.
I was hoping for some good
No, you
news.
don't usually get a
I know.
decrease in
No,
taxes,
all right.
unfortunately.
No other questions? Questions from the audience? Yes, Rick? Could you come to the microphone just so people,
You're not gonna make us walk around with
your
this?
name?
I think you can walk around with a microphone.
No, I'm done walking around with a microphone.
Good evening, Rick Collins, 74 Orange Street. I was just curious if any of the towns that have a split tax rate also have a residential percentage similar to Abington's. Are there any towns like Abington who have split their rate essentially?
Well, it's a great question, but when you say familiar to, like Abington, are you talking about the budgets? I mean, there's a lot of surrounding towns that don't have the same budget. They have trash in their levy, things of that nature. So
Do you know which towns, city of Brockton has it?
City, oh, in Plymouth County?
Yeah.
I definitely know those. There's 5 communities that have a split rate in Plymouth County, and one of them is Brockton. Carver, Middleborough, West Bridgewater, Brockton, and Hanover. Those are the 5.
I can see Middleborough and Carver, Hanover.
And like I said, the average residential percentage of these
Oh, Hanover
5
Mall.
communities that have a split tax rate is 71%. The average residential percentage for a single-rate town is 88, we're 87. And the average residential percentage for a split-rate community throughout Massachusetts is 69%.
The question was if there were any, the argument that we often hear about a split tax rate is that you're not just raising it on Walmart and Target and Stop and Shop, you're raising it on all the small business owners as well. I was curious if there were any communities who have a similar residential commercial split as Abington, who have done the split but didn't see any impact on their local business base, basically. But it's hard to see with throwing Hanover and Brockton into the mix as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Hanover has the Hanover Mall, and I think the Cranberry Bog's probably in those other towns. Yeah,
Carver.
Carver.
Right, it's,
West
there's no
Bridgewater has
specific
one.
way to get to your agricultural base without a split. That's the problem, yeah.
Does the board want to adopt?
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
On the averages, Jack?
Yep.
You said currently 61.3 of all single-family homes are value at or below average. And that average changes annually as we go through the review of the value of the homes that we have to be reviewed on a given basis. Is
Yes,
that
it
correct?
does. The average single-family home this year is around this $343,000, and I believe last year was $322,000.
Okay.
So that's good news.
It is good news.
Okay. Except for when you get your tax bill.
Motion that we accept the Board of Assessors' suggestion that we set the tax rate at $17.83 for fiscal year 2018.
It's actually setting it as a single tax rate.
Yeah,
It's a single tax rate.
it could fluctuate. Motion's made and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you both.
6:55, Major Richard Kong, request for entertainment license, 1437 Bedford Street.
Is this a advertised public hearing?
I'm not sure, is it?
For
Is it a
the-
posted hearing, guys?
No, it is not an advertised public
Okay.
hearing.
Is Mr. Kong here? No? Okay, I guess we can wait on that then. I don't know, what does the board want to do? Do we want to do some of the
Why don't we
minutes?
do
and
some
wait
of
till
the
7?
Things first.
All right.
yeah, 'cause MBTA
Approval of October 12, 2017, open session minutes. Was everybody there?
It looks like all of us were here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion to accept the October 12th, 2017 minutes as written.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. October 16th.
Move to accept.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. And October 30th, 2017, open session minutes. We were all present for that one. That was the last meeting.
Motion to accept the October 30th minutes as written and submitted.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. We're flying. Why don't we do the appointments now, just to, because I don't know how long item 4 will take, so. Appointment to the Park and Rec Commission, Rachel Collins. Is Rachel here? What's that? She's unable to make it. I guess she might have a spokesman if we need to, but,
Yeah,
Um,
but I guess one of them had to stay home with the kids.
okay.
No.
Rick-
She's working, oh, so Ricky's babysitting? Okay.
There you go.
So appointment to the Park and Rec Commission, there are 2 openings on that board, I believe, so this is one of them. Rachel has an impressive resume, and she's the only one that has shown interest so far. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to accept Rachel Collins as an appointment to the Park and Rec Commission.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to Rachel Collins, 74 Orange Street. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. appointment to surplus school building committee. We have Paul Joyce, 46 Highland Street, Robert Stevens, 707 Bedford Street, and Rick Collins, 74 Orange Street. Are all three gentlemen here? We are, so let's go in order with here. Paul Joyce, would you like to come up to the microphone, please? And this is the final slot on the surplus school building committee. I know that our member is Bob Manning. I don't know if they've had a meeting yet, but...
We'll be having one as soon as this is done.
Okay. Paul, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you, your address, and why you'd like to serve on this committee?
Sure. Paul Joyce, 46 Highland Street, Abington, Massachusetts. I've been in town for 20 years now, and seen the development of the schools. I spent a few years on the Finance Committee. With regard to these school buildings, I see them as a couple of assets in the town. Well, assets in one word, but something that has to be dealt with before it becomes a larger problem. Personally, my background is in engineering. I work in facilities directly related to operations and building management and things like that. So.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
No.
None? Okay, thank you. Robert Stevens, 707 Bedford Street. Mr. Stevens, would you like to come up to the microphone, please? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your age. No, I'm only kidding.
Robert Stevens, 707 Bedford Street. I'm a student athlete and student at Abington High School, at the new school. And I use the facilities every day and in the classroom every day, so I'm hearing a lot from the other students and teachers and parents. So I wanted to put more input from students and teachers and parents in the school board committee, especially for students. And I represent students in my student council and in my class, so a lot of that, I get complaints a lot, so
Yeah.
I like to bring them over. And with that, I have a lot of complaints myself, so that's really it.
Okay. Just a heads up, this surplus school building committee is, the two schools that are no longer going to be used, the North School and the Center School, is to determine what the best use for those
Use
properties.
for them?
is.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any questions from the board?
No?
Are you a senior?
No, I'm sophomore.
Sophomore?
Oh, good.
Okay, excellent. Let me just ask this question before, because I know we had a little bit of controversy one time when we had a young person on the stage committee. Are there requirements, are there age requirements for this or any other board in town? Nope? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And lastly, Rick Collins, 74 Orange Street. You don't need to introduce yourself, you already did, so. And let us know your interest in this, please.
Good evening. I'm glad that there are so many qualified people for this position. I think that's a great sign for the town. My interest is as a member of the planning board that I feel I would have bring a great sense of understanding of our town's infrastructure needs, how these parcels could meet into our town's master plan, specifically potentially regarding housing, affordable housing, veteran and elderly housing, as well as traffic needs, other infrastructure needs in the town. My professional experience also has a lot to do with public outreach for construction projects, and I'm particularly focused on making sure that these meetings are actively promoted in the community, not just a notice kind of posted on town hall, but really a lot of outreach directly to the affected neighborhoods and affected stakeholders.
Thank you very much. Rick, any questions from the board? None? Okay, thank you. Does the board have any feelings on this at all?
Motion to open the board's approval of all three candidates and let a decision be made based on motions?
Okay, so we have a motion to place all three names in nomination? That's what I get from that?
Yeah,
All right.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All right, so for that motion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so all three names are in nomination. So what I'd like to do is do a roll call vote, and everybody gets a vote. Since we don't have all five members, I believe, if I'm correct, someone's going to need 3 votes. And if that doesn't happen, I will ask the board to re-vote it, and if it still doesn't happen, I'd like to wait till we have a full board, if that's agreeable to everyone. So, we can start down the end with the new guy.
The new guy, that'd be me?
Yep.
So we'll vote for one of them.
Yep, I vote for Rich Collins.
Alex?
Rick Collins.
Rick Collins. Bob?
Paul Joyce?
I will also vote for Paul Joyce. And this is no slight to any of the other people, especially not to Robert Stevens, because I see his name's in the next one, so. So we have a 2-2 vote. Does anybody want to change their vote at all, or? I think I'm all set.
No,
All set. All right, we have to wait till we get a full board, as we do not have a majority. Sorry, guys, on that. I hate to wait, and I hate to stop the ball rolling, too. I think we should have a meeting anyways, but,
Rick had something to say there.
absolutely. Rick?
I'm more than willing to withdraw my name if there's other qualified candidates, if that makes it easier for the board to get this going.
I'll actually I'll leave the choice up to you. If you want to withdraw your name, you can, but.
I'll withdraw.
Okay, all right. All right, and Mr. Stevens also withdraw your name? Not quite. All right, there you go. All right, so we have, I guess we can revote it again, if that's agreeable to the board.
Okay.
Well, I'll start this, just so not to put Tom in the hot seat, Paul Joyce,
I don't mind being in the hot seat.
not now.
Paul Joyce?
I'll go with Paul Joyce.
And I will go with Paul Joyce also.
Okay,
But
congratulations.
I'd also,
Yes,
like to, I don't think it's a bad idea to have a student sit in on this board. It would be a non-voting position. But I would also like to,
even what Rick mentioned is that we invite anybody to go to these meetings, you know, so I have no problem with that. Thank you, gentlemen. Appointment to the Sage Committee. We have one name, Robert Stevens. Mr. Stevens, you do not have to come up again. You did a great job the
Unless
first
you
time.
want to, of course.
You did a great job the first time, but very impressed by Mr. Stevens. I'll accept nomination.
Motion to accept Robert Stevens as an appointment to the Sage Committee?
second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thank you, Rick, by the way. Appreciate that, too. Do we have, what do I got left to do? Do we have a Major Rick Kong available yet? No. Okay. How about John Kariga from the MBTA? Oh, okay.
I'm John Ray with the MBTA, and this is John Prager with me, but I'm the head of the department, so I figured I'd come in and
And your name is?
John Ray.
John Ray. Okay, thank you, John. Come on down. We appreciate you all coming tonight.
Game show?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Me too.
I guess we don't even need to explain why you're here, but we had some concerns about the gates and the number of accidents happening in Abington, so maybe you can, I don't know, tell us your opinion.
If I could
Yes,
make a
please.
statement first,
Uh-oh.
and it will probably give him things to answer, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we just did this live on WATD, the same statement, so,
When you say we, you mean you.
well, the board. Abington has 7 road crossings, if I'm counting them right, is that correct? 7, not 9, right? And in my opinion, we've had more than our fair share of incidents on these, on the tracks. And all of them probably the fault of the victim, but it doesn't mean we should ignore them. I'd like to know how Abington compares to other towns that have the quad gates, and I understand the Greenbush line doesn't allow horns, so you were required to do quad gates. I'd like to know how the incidents on that line compare to the incidents on this line. In 1998, we had a 15-year-old girl killed in Abington. When one train passed, she went around the gate not realizing another train was coming. Had we had quad gates at that time, I honestly don't believe she would have crawled under the gate, dragged her bike along, and gone across the tracks. The most recent incident was an elderly man on North Ave that went around the gate, and his truck was hit by the train and he was killed. On Summer Street in Abington, we don't even have a sidewalk gate, which I would assume is required. From looking at the mechanism that drops the arm It appears to me it's the same mechanism on a sidewalk gate as it is on a street gate. It just seems to be more counterbalances on the street one. So I'm wondering why the MBTA can't just extend longer arms on the sidewalk ones and solve the problem. But also during my research, and if I can pull that up here, in rebuilding the old Colony line, the MBTA recognized that the public was not accustomed to high-speed trains traveling through their community. In 1996, the legislature said that all grade crossings to be constructed on the old Colony line shall be guarded by 2 drop-down gates on each side of the tracks, quad gates. Before reopening the old Colony line, the MBTA did not install the legislatively mandated quad gates, in which 2 automatic gates come down. Instead, they used a federal grant to hire LS Transit Systems to conduct an analysis on the 40 grade crossings along this line. In 1998, in May of 1998, May 26th to be exact, they installed cameras in Halifax, Kingston, and Wales Street in Abington. From May 26th to June 8th, just under 2 weeks, they observed 4 incidents of people with bicycles and 1 pedestrian going around the gate when the gates were down. And they still didn't put the quad gates on there like the legislator said. So I didn't have time to continue the research on that today. Did the legislature change its mind and say they don't need the quad gates? And if not, then I think we want the quad gates, but if they did, I still want the quad gates, and I think it's a simple enough fix. I'm not an engineer, but looking at the sidewalk gates, like I said, the mechanism looks like it's the same mechanism, so why can't we do quad gates? And you know, the trains go through here, they're allowed 80 miles an hour, the MBTA cut it down to 70 miles an hour. So they're going at least 50 to 70 miles an hour through Abington. And I know the Greenbush, they go slower, they have no horns, and they have quad gates. Why can't we do the same in Abington? And I'm not directing this at you personally.
I'm gonna have to get you answers for a lot of this stuff. You've done a lot of research.
I
It's
understand that.
apparent.
Any other board members have any questions or jump on that? Okay. Thank you, Joe.
So I took a bunch of notes here. I'll try to go back. How do these crossings compare with others? We can do that. I mean, that information is captured by the Federal Railroad Administration. It's available online. It's there for anybody who wants to see it, can go and pull that stuff up. It lays out what kind of apparatus is installed, the warning system, what the road looks like, the speed on the roadway, the speed of the trains, the number of trains, all that information is in there. And it does also capture any safety incident that gets reported, and all accidents are reported. There could be times when somebody hits a gate and breaks the gate off, and that's just a maintenance thing. The railroad will come back and put a new gate up, but that wouldn't necessarily be in there. But any accident that actually takes place will be in the federal database.
Can you forward that site to us?
Oh, absolutely. It's real easy to find, but I'll send it along first thing tomorrow.
Unless you know it.
Okay. Too many dots and slashes, so. 4 quad gates in other towns, there are very few 4 quad gates on the MBTA system. There's about 250 odd grade crossings. These are public roads, grade crossings, so there's, in addition to that, there's a whole bunch of private crossings that exist out there that have no warning systems on them, including, there's one here in town at Shapiro. It's a little used crossing, but it is in fact a grade crossing that people use without warning systems. Of those, I have to count these up, but I'm going to tell you that there's probably less than 6 that have 4 quad gates on them, and they're all in on the Greenbush side of things. And there are less 4 quad gates on the Greenbush line than were originally looked at, because they caused other problems along the way with keeping traffic moving without having the ability to back up traffic from adjacent intersections. Summer Street, if there's no sidewalk gate, then there must have been no sidewalk there at the time the crossing was put in. Could the sidewalk have been added? at that location?
Maybe after the T.
Because if it was added, it's not difficult to fix these. There are standards that we have to follow, and the standards have changed. It used to be that you could have the crossing mechanism could be between the edge of the sidewalk and the street, right on the curb line, and you could have a back gate that came down to block the sidewalk, and then the big gate blocks the street. They won't let us do that anymore, so now we have to do is put the gate mechanism behind the sidewalk, and when the gate comes down...
This is actually on the opposite side of the street.
Oh, okay, then,
It's only a sidewalk on
then there
one
was no
side.
sidewalk there at the time, but, when we built these down here, we put the conduit in the ground, so as long as the conduit hasn't failed on us, then it shouldn't be too difficult to get that crossing added, the crossing mechanism added. So I'll look at that as well. The gates being the same sidewalk and roadway, they are the same. Like I said, there's a back gate that always has to be has less weight on it than the main gate, but they are balanced by counterweights. New ones go in now, we just put more weight on the back and make the gate longer to cover both the sidewalk and the street. So I don't know if there's a place you want to use those, but that's really the standard today. And during the rebuilding of Colony, I remember the discussion about the state legislature, but I remember it was not followed through on, and I believe it was that rule was changed. So I'd have to do a lot more research to get back to that time. Yeah.
They're not out there.
Right.
But we don't know that.
During the time following the opening of the old Colony lines, though, the MBTA did come back and install 4-quadrant gates at Whale Street with cameras, vehicle detection in the street and all that. And cameras were put up, and it did not have much of an impact on children with bicycles trying to drive around the gates. In fact, the cameras that were installed as part of that, we fed a lot of information back to the Abington Police Department to try to recognize the kids and get the message back to the families that this is bad decision process going on here. That when the gates are coming down, it means a train is coming. Don't try to get around them. And that's what we were seeing was going on at that point in time. Beyond that, 4-quadrant gates, they come with their own set of problems. Like the study that was done at the Whale Street intersection, there was a lot of time and effort put into not trapping a car, because gates are going to come down in front of the car as well as behind the car if a car is on the crossing. That's one of the things that is always in the back of your mind. How do we prevent somebody who won't back up through a gate or continue once you've gone across? Once you enter the crossing and the gate comes down behind you, just keep going. 4-quadrant gates puts another gate in front of you that doesn't allow you to keep going. Now, the gates are all set up with shear pins, and a lot of them are spring-loaded today, where if you hit the gate, it just swings out of the way. And that's what we want you to do. Get off the tracks, or if you can't get off the tracks, get out of the car and get away from it. It's an important thing. We try to make sure that people understand that. When the old Colony was starting up, we did go into all the classrooms in town and around, all up and down the line, both lines at that point in time, Middleborough and Plymouth line, to get into the schools and do this, what we call Operation Lifesaver. It's a training program that's, basically geared. I'm sorry.
You still do that?
We still do that, and we can arrange to have that happen too. That's an important thing. At the time we came down here, we actually did a train the trainer program. So we would train both police and fire personnel to actually conduct the classes. If that's kind of stopped down here, then we'd love to be back down here to get that jump started again. Knowing the dangers is the first piece of this thing. And then how 4-quadrant gates are working in other towns, we can try to get some information on that. It's really going to come back to the same FRA information. I don't know that we've had problems with any of those 4-quadrant gates, but the majority of the grade crossings we have, which have the half gates, we block only the entrance to the crossing and leave the exits open for people to get off. We do that. That is by far the standard that we use. It's in place everywhere, and we have very few grade crossing accidents on the MBTA. And it's when someone drives around the gates, there's not too much we can do about that one.
No, I understand, but in both these incidents that I brought up, I think had there been quad gates, I don't think that older gentleman would have driven around and through a gate to get over there, and I honestly don't think that girl would have climbed under a gate with her bike.
Yeah.
Go around there. So, I would still like to see some quad gates at least North Ave, and, the other one, well, North Ave is really the main, that's where we've seen most of our incidents, at North Ave.
Yeah.
And some are just, you know,
Stupidity.
yeah, well, I didn't say that, you did.
No, but
I think there's been a few times when it's actually cars driving down the tracks as opposed to
Exactly.
even down the road, so.
And all of these are probably not the MBTA's fault, but that doesn't lessen the impact it has to the town.
And then, as far as sounding horns, I don't know if that's something you wanted to, I mean, you mentioned it
Well,
with the
I
other
still
towns.
get complaints about that. I don't know what can be done about that.
What was the determination factor of which towns would allow, was it the town's decision, or was it the MBTA's decision?
No, I actually stood at this podium many years ago and actually went through this at one point in time. It's actually the town's, it's up to the town on whether they want a whistle ban or not. You have to meet certain criteria, but the town works right with the Federal Railroad Administration on, you know, basically evaluating and filing a application to cease the whistle sounding at all the grade crossings. It's what they usually do is what they call a corridor application, which means they would want all of the grade crossings in town to be treated exactly the same. So you wouldn't be able to pick one over another. You'd have to either silence them at all the crossings or none of the crossings, but it's really not the MBTA's. We do not support that, by the way. We won't actively, you know, object to the sounding, the ceasing the whistle sounding, but it's not something we recommend at any location.
I was told that in a town that bans the whistle, that you have to do quad gates. Is that correct?
No. No. There are, in Massachusetts, 24 towns that have no quad gates and have whistle bans. If you have and I'm going way outside because I'm doing this from memory here now, but the Federal Railroad Administration looks at the number of accidents that have happened at a particular grade crossing. From that, they establish, in the speed of the trains, the amount of road traffic, whether the street has street lights on it, lighting up the street lights, the number of lanes that cross the thing. They put that all into an algorithm that's on their FRA's website, and it gives you a score. That score is then compared to a national threshold of grade crossing scoring across the entire country. Every state uses the same number. If you fall below that number, you're entitled to a whistle ban. If you're above that number, you do not get one. However, then there's a list of supplemental safety measures that can be applied to each grade crossing to give you a better score, a reduced score. Things like median barriers, so a rubber, I don't know what you would call it, like a curbing that would be down the center of the road with reflective markers on it that basically channelize the traffic to keep, everybody keeps on their own side of the street. You could actually have a raised barrier with granite curbing and, you know, planters and stuff on it. You can have photo enforcement. I'm not sure how that works, but you also can then go for 4-quadrant gates or 4-quadrant gates with vehicle detection. I mean, so there's a whole menu of different improvements that can be put in place. Most cities and towns have been able to get the whistle ban that they were seeking with the raised median barrier or the channelization markers that would go in the center of the street.
Did I understand you correctly when you said that the existing gates could be converted to quad gates? Does it's the same mechanism?
No, I'm not a signal engineer. They would have to go back and look at all of that. There's a lot of infrastructure that would have to be added, just the relays to control the gates. Typically, the exit gates are going to be delayed a little bit behind the entrance gates so that somebody would continue through the crossing and come out the other side before the gate came down in front of them. You know, there's a lot more to it than I'd be able to comment on, but it's not as simple as just adding a gate. It's
Did I understand then what you said was that the conduit was capped at these gates?
This
in
was
case
to
there
add the
possibly could be power supplies there already, it's just a matter of adding the gate then?
This was the discussion on the sidewalk gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sidewalk gate is a little bit different because it's coming down with at the same relays,
time.
the same time as everything else. So as long as there's a path for the wire to get over to that location, and then the cost of the gate mechanism to be installed there, but you don't, the idea is not to have to dig up the street or the tracks to get cabling over there.
Okay.
So I think, back to Bob's question, so the areas in town where we have the sidewalk gates over here and the street gate over here, and this one is open, could that sidewalk gate have a longer arm on it and now become a quad gate, basically?
The problem is, like I said before, it's gonna come down at the same time, and you're gonna have, if there's a car stopped for traffic or someone turning in front of them, you're gonna have both gates come down at the same time. If they're on the crossing, they're gonna be sitting there with, looking in the mirror and seeing a gate, and looking out the windshield and seeing a gate. That would not be recommended.
So, you're gonna follow up with, the website?
Yep, I'll get you the website information. I will take a look at North Ave to see what, if anything, we can do over there. And I believe you said it was Summer Street,
Summer
where the sidewalks, but no sidewalk gate. And that's probably gonna be the first thing we take a look at, because that's not, we don't like to see that. We would have much preferred to know about it when the sidewalks were going in, if we could have, but we'll get down there.
Sidewalk must've been put in afterwards, but.
We'll get down and take a look at that.
The other thing I'm encouraged on is you mentioned the original, the MBTA went to the schools and did training, and that's still available.
Yes.
That's 100%, I don't want to speak for the board, but I would believe that's 100% desired again. And if there's a trainer program, I would believe the town would be interested in participating in that also.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's now or later, but I think it's a generational thing. The kids hear something once, and
Absolutely.
it would be good to hear it over and over and over again. So if we could get some type of, at least a recreation of the program that was offered to all of our students in the town, and then get it possible trainer, so we can reinstitutionalize that on a regular annual basis, and then have you come biannually or every 3 years to help reinforce it, that would be a much preferred process than not having anything at all.
I like hearing it. We're gonna be down here. We'll take care of that, and what we're gonna do now is be checking the rest of the towns on either side of you to see if we can do it all at once, because all these things went on at the same time, and if it's here, it's everywhere,
I
right?
can't believe anyone would not want to have that
Absolutely.
program all over again. But
Yep.
thank you very much for that. I think that's an excellent program, so I encourage that we get that done.
If we get this FRA information and it proves that Abington has more accidents, is there anything that we can do to get increased safety measures I mean, you talked about these other added features. You were using it as an example that you don't have to blow the whistles anymore if you install these.
Right.
But if it proves that the FRA information proves that these intersections in Abington are more than the national average, can we get more safety measures?
If you're looking for a whistle ban, then the cost of those supplemental safety measures would be yours.
I'm not talking about a whistle ban, I'm just talking about.
In
other
general?
yes.
I think what would happen is we'd, probably have to take a look at the accidents that actually took place and see what kind of measures would actually have played a role in, maybe reducing or mitigating that type of issue.
But like on North Ave, rather than a quad gate, you may be able to put a barrier between the two lanes, which would prevent someone from going around.
I mean, look, I'd be recommending that anyhow, but typically that would be the towns to do, through the highway department, not for the MBTA to be performing. But having said that, I'll check the grade cross, if we have work going on at the grade crossing, we'd be glad to work with the town to see if there's something we can do to help out, and especially something like, we point out a specific crossing as an issue, then it's easy for us to focus on that.
Great.
Any other questions? No? Public? No? Rick?
Rick Collins, 74 Orange Street. I had a good amount of involvement back on when Greenbush was being permitted and proposed and built. I think actually the first time I came and spoke to the Board of Selectmen was 9 years ago on the train whistle issue, when the people in the muster fields were complaining about the whistles. Mr. Ray is as knowledgeable about the commuter rail system in the state as anyone else in the Commonwealth. And he works really hard to make sure it's a safe, well-designed commuter rail system. If this is where the board wants to head, I feel like I need to need to point out that it needs to be a very board-driven process, that it's the town that's going to have to push this issue. The town will have to identify the funding, work with our representatives in the legislature, probably to secure some grant money for any additional measures they want to do. It's a very long, involved process. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying that it's going to be up to the board to really drive this car.
I don't think it's a consensus of the board to ban the whistles.
No.
I
But
think,
I think he's talking about the safety measures also.
All of it, to be honest.
I'm personally am not in favor of banning the whistles. I don't live close enough to it, but, you know, and I feel bad for the people that do, but I'm not in favor of that. I would like to see a quad gate or a barrier between the east and west lanes on North Ave to prevent people from going around. And I definitely want to see more education in the schools.
There's also been comments about better lighting at the North Ave one, so maybe
So I think it's something that the town has to look at, but also the MBTA has to take a look at it. And maybe you guys can come up with recommendations, and part of it might be on the town.
The towns that have, I don't want to say enhanced infrastructure, but that either go forward with a ban or quad gates, it's because they've lobbied very aggressively to do so. Not because the T isn't willing, but just because it's priorities. You know what, I don't want to speak for the MBTA or the MBCR. I'm walking into a dangerous water. But the experience is that it really needs to be driven and advocated by the towns, whatever you decide to do.
And it was actually, thank you to Representative Jen Cantwell of Marshfield that reached out and got these people here tonight for us. And he said the same thing. It's definitely going to be a funding thing, and it may involve the legislature to do that. So I think, you know, we see what they find out and report back, and we can go from there.
Absolutely.
The only thing I want to add to, as I forgot to mention earlier, there is a program at the state level. It's a federal highway program. It's Section 130, and it provides money for grade crossing improvements. It's a competitive process, so they come out and they do a diagnostic review of a grade crossing. They meet with, you know, the fire department, the local highway director. If it involves a state route, then it would be some of the state folks there. But they do a full-blown diagnostic. The Federal Railroad Administration typically will have somebody there, as will somebody from the Department of Public Utilities. And then from there, they will look at that crossing as well as any other crossing that's in the program. But it's a source of funding that could become available. If you don't make it the first time, then, you know, it's look at the program. It's typically a 90-10 split. So the FHWA comes up with 90% of the funds at that point.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
130, thank you. We'll let our grant writer know. Thank you, folks, for coming down. We
Thank you very much
appreciate
for
it.
coming here.
Thank you.
Appreciate the follow-up. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you very much.
6:55, we have an appointment with Mr. Major Rick Kong. Rick, you want to come on up to the microphone, and we're all
Thank you very much.
trying to figure out, it's like a big mystery here, what's going on at 1437 Bedford Street. Let me dig this out here. Welcome, your name and address, your name and business?
Yes, it's Stronghold Ops. It's 1437 Bedford Street.
That's across from the pool place?
Right next to
okay.
the buses.
Yep.
Now, I know that we have checked off amplification system, light show, recorded music, and others. So if you can just give us, tell us what the plans are for up there. Actually, better yet, what's been going on up there?
Okay. It's a continuation of virtually the same business that's been ongoing for the past three and a half years under Randy Fink. How I became associated with him was I am, you know, as a retired Marine Corps major and a former police officer and a tactical instructor for law enforcement SWAT teams since 2002. I developed a what I call full active shooter training fast course. It's a counterterrorism active shooter course for law enforcement. It's recognized by MPTC, Municipal Police Training Committee. And I've been training law enforcement, primarily first responders, military, some military and private security on active shooter counterterrorism out of airsoft facilities. Initially, the first 5 years out of a facility in Walpole, they shuttered. Then I came to Stronghold, next closest one. That's how I got to know the owner. And then, unbeknownst to me, he was looking to sell it, and he offered to sell to me starting verbal offer in April of this past year. And through the summer, we did, the due diligence and all that. So it was essentially, as we call it, a relay race baton handoff. As he describes it, he and his wife, kind of like a mom and pop boutique airsoft family entertainment thing. Now we're at a level where we're trying to make it more structured, more corporate, just taking it to the next level, the baton handoff, so to speak.
Now, airsoft for dummies. Explain to me what that is.
Okay, airsoft, okay, we call them replicas because they're not real weapons. However, especially with my background, I'm really stressing handling of them safely, just like it's a live firearm. Believe in reps and muscle memory and how you handle that, having respect for it. It's a toy, really, but, it's a toy that shoots a 6mm plastic BB. Our field limit is 350 feet per second as per our insurance requirement. So, as a former Marine, when I came in there, the first thing I saw was, okay, we need to really up the safety and everything. So we're doing that, starting with the staff and carrying on with the patrons that come there.
So it's basically paintball, but instead of paint, it's pellets.
Pellet, exactly.
And
yeah.
you wear
Full protective equipment.
protection, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, there are definite, very hard and fast rules on safety, PPE, personal protective equipment. We also have a laser tag facility adjacent to it. That doesn't shoot anything. It's just like, like those pointers,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And we hold laser tag parties and Nerf gun parties for children. It's really more of an emphasis on trying to make it a family entertainment facility. We have, again, if you're talking Nerf gun, you're talking children, I think it's 6 to 11-ish, and then laser tag is kind of like that bridge. And then from airsoft, the minimum age is 12 on up to adults. From day one, though, I've been stressing I want the facility to espouse, a safe, family-friendly, fun environment where we're trying to really preach, in addition to safety, but integrity, because it's a game where you got to call your shots. Unlike paintball, when you get hits, obvious, you have a paint splash. Airsoft is not so obvious, so you're left to your integrity to call your hits. Sportsmanship and respect above all. I've made that very clear to my staff since day one and the patrons. Respect will be the #1 thing. We will not tolerate disrespect toward anyone in that facility, to include, if a patron is disrespectful to anyone, then, we'll handle it properly, and if doesn't want to play by the rules, we'll politely ask them to go somewhere else.
So the events you're gonna have up there are airsoft, Nerf?
Laser tag and Nerf.
And
Correct.
that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, training too,
Training.
I do the law enforcement training. We do also have, I would like to see it to be more of a training facility as well during the weekdays, because we're primarily a weekend operation. Through, teaching these courses, like what I tell my cops during the course, I'll say, first and foremost, my FAST course is a team building leadership development course. The vehicle for delivering that is active shooter counterterrorism. And we've taken applications, civilianized it, so to speak, and we've found some success in terms of team building, small group leadership for like corporations, things like that. And some kind of group parties, things like that. We'd like to build that up more, because I definitely think there's value in that. But we're essentially, in a nutshell, we're an entertainment facility and a training facility.
Are you the only business up there on that? I thought the parking spaces there, they'd all be for your?
That's us, all us, no one else.
and your hours of operation, now, this is currently open now? Or?
No, we're primarily on the weekends, so our hours are Friday nights from 5 PM to 10 PM, Saturdays noon to 10, Sundays noon to 8. And if we have some parties like laser tag or Nerf gun parties, it's usually in the mornings, like 10 o'clock, 10 to 12, that kind of thing.
Should be
before we
no
open
later
up.
than 10 o'clock at night.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Just a correction on the application, it says Saturday, I think the numbers are reversed, it's 12 to 10, where it says 10 to 12 on there, so just be a change.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. It's 12 to 10 for open
Does
play.
the existing owner have this license?
You mean Randy?
Yeah. Do we currently have a license at that location, an entertainment license?
He had an entertainment
He
license,
did,
yes,
okay.
yep.
So really, this is almost like a transfer.
Yeah, that's exactly what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, we're just trying to make it more structured. You're just taking it to the next level.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, just a couple on the amplification system and the light show and the recorded music. Do you have that now?
Well, all that is, okay, so when we're running a game, like, that's what they are, they're games, airsoft game. I have referees out there. I tell them, they're the policemen on the field. They ensure safety and proper conduct. So you would have one lead ref, he's got a microphone, he's up on a stand, so he's calling the game, so to speak. And then you have roving referees. And, that's pretty, and we have a sound system, we have speakers. I guess Randy was, in his prior life, he was an AV guy, so he has some professional quality speakers up there, because sometimes they like to hear music. I know I use it for my fast courses with the police. Sometimes I'll put some background sound effects, to try to make the training more realistic, for example. That's all it is.
And the light show?
The light show, what that is, again, that's more the laser tag room, and it's just some, laser projectors, I guess, strobe lights, and just blinking lights, that's all it is.
And that's up there already?
Yes, that's there. That's been in place since at least since Randy has been there.
And the recorded music is
Yeah, that was all his.
It's all there already?
Yep.
Okay. And the chief had said something about you'd marked other, anything else that we should know or that he should know that?
No, that's the plan. Again, I would just like, my goal would be hopefully to perhaps build up the training aspects of it on Monday through Thursday, because, we're essentially a weekend operation on the entertainment side. For example, last week, we had a police department that rented out our facility to conduct their training. They did force-on-force training there, Monday through Friday. So, certainly would love to do that, to more agencies, things like that. Again, if there are any corporate teams looking for some team-building training, certainly would love to do that as well.
So the selectmen could take on another board in town and, shoot them up?
Or we could take up another town.
Oh, yeah, that's
Or
right.
each other?
Yeah, I know the women selectmen are older.
It's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun.
Or against Tom.
There you go, I'm ready.
No. We're also, some of the improvements, I'd like to add, so we have a staging area, you got the playing field, and we have a staging area, where people get their gear together and everything. I call it the ready room, that's just a military term, but, we've spent a lot of time, energy, and money in really building that up, because we plan to dedicate that to a Marine, a sergeant that was, unfortunately was killed overseas in the war against terrorism. And, being a former Marine, that's what we plan to do. So.
It sounds great. I guess for me, I'd like a little more definition of each level of activity that you want to do there, especially this corporate piece and this policing piece. I'd like to have a little more detail on the actual plan. No license, no permit requirement to participate in any of these activities, right? There's nothing going on that would require permitting at all, correct?
Yeah.
And
That's correct.
any police agency you bring in, or any federal funding agency, no weaponry would be allowed on the property, correct?
Yes, they use airsoft.
Right, and, so I guess for me.
There's no live bullets going on.
I know, I know that, I guess for me, and I guess for the chief, I'd like to be able to give the chief what he's looking for, which is a little more detailed information at each of the levels you're talking about, on the application for your laser program, your airsoft program, and your children's program, as far as whatever that's going to be, and determination. I guess one of the concerns was the amplification system, the light show. If it's already existing, I understand that. I guess for me, I'm hearing you explain it at the podium, but I'd like to see it in print. I'd like to see what you're proposing to do there, from what's happening there now to where you want to take it to. It'd be good to have that in the piece of paper.
Okay.
So I could clarify if we read that, or anyone who else in the town I need to have a look at it, could understand it sounds great. It sounds like a really positive program. It sounds like a better use of the physical facility. It sounds like you have a plan in place. I'd just like to see that plan in writing.
Sure.
I guess for me, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of, when I was filling it out, I was kind of asking questions like how to fill it out, and I was told, I'll just check other, and, you know, they
Yep.
said you'll explain, you know, I'm more than happy to put on paper.
So I would appreciate that. I would appreciate a clearer definition of the level of activity, the participant age requirements, and what your plan is, especially for this modification, which is using it as on an adult level, whether it's for law enforcement and/or for corporate level. I don't want books. Just a paragraph, maybe 5 or 6 sentences, what you're planning to do there.
Okay.
It would be very helpful, I guess, for me and also for the other members of the town to make a better qualified decision once we read that.
Yeah,
If that's
sure.
all right with you, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Couple,
Even if you like, I can include there's a YouTube link on our fast course. our
That would be also wonderful to have.
Seeing is believing, and you can see.
And I would like the
Okay.
chief to see what you're proposing.
Sure.
that's the biggest concern I think that the board probably has, is the police chief wasn't clear on exactly what it was. So, my suggestion is, I mean, if you're doing police training there, it sounds perfect
Well,
if you,
that's the other thing. I wanted to offer it up, because Abington is our hometown. If he wants to send any of his officers through, he's
I
more
mean,
than welcome to.
I'm willing to approve this, not contingent upon the police chief and the Board of Health, and I'll explain to you why. But my suggestion is go to the police, the chief, talk to him, show him what it's about, bring him down there, have the officers come in. It might be a win-win situation for
Yeah,
everyone.
no, absolutely.
And the other concern the police chief had is the decibel levels. They're concerned about the sound in there, because there are some residential neighborhoods. So that's contingent upon the Board of Health maybe doing an inspection for the decibel levels. But does the board have any other feelings on this?
No, I was just worried, too, Ken, about the parking, the parking plan and the outside building lighting. How much lighting you have outside or whatever, so I guess.
We have two floodlights and front lights that illuminate the parking lot. And there's also lights from the surrounding
Commercial
bus
property?
parking lot, yeah, and there's another thing, there's a big mound of mulch, or I don't know what it is, but it's always steaming at night. But anyway, there's.
Mulch.
Yeah, okay.
That's what it is, mulch.
Mulch.
I know we had some issues with this location back when I first started, when it was more of what was it, like a,
Was the previous owner, I think, not?
yeah, it was it was more like a, what do they call that show, when they do weird obstacles and stuff like that?
I don't know, I just remember going up there on a Halloween.
You mean
they
the
were doing
zombie,
Halloween
the
events.
zombie thing?
The zombie,
Yeah.
But before that, it was, remember they did some kind of like, what's that TV show where they do the weird obstacles?
Ninja?
Yeah, Ninja.
Ninja?
It was like, they do a ninja,
That
and
was-
the ambulances were getting called
That
up
was
there all the time.
two previous owners.
Okay.
I've never met them, but I've heard the stories.
okay.
And then after that, they tried to do some late night teen dances up there with
Yeah,
foam
yeah,
and stuff, and that,
that's-
we did not approve that either. This sounds like it's been a business that's been going on for a while, and, so I really don't have that much of a concern, as long as the police chief is satisfied and the Board of Health with the sounds are satisfied. It looks like they have plenty of parking, but again.
Yeah, I would welcome Abington Police to send some of their officers up. Actually, one of their officers has been through the fast course, he can vouch for it personally. He was with another agency before he joined, and he speaks, virtually every graduate speaks very, very highly of the course.
Excellent. Does the board have any feelings? Do they want to make a motion?
Just
Do you wanna-
another question, how much time do you spend up there? Are you up there
There are a lot.
a lot?
Yeah, I've been, the first 6 weeks was a whirlwind. I was probably averaging 3-4 hours sleep a night, because I was just working there, just, trying to improve the place, really make it presentable. We've done a lot, to the facility. Weekends they're a whirlwind, and then during the week, we're in as needed. Like, I was in there today since, before noon, sometimes they're just long 10, 12-hour days.
There's 17 employees too,
There's
that's
just-
impressive.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff just a lot of stuff. but, you know,
So, it's an operating business now,
yes.
and once you get your approvals, then I'm assuming legally it'll be transferred to you.
Yes.
So, I would like to approve it, pending final okay from the police chief, so he doesn't actually have to come back. But if
Sure.
you satisfy the police chief, within 30 days, I guess.
Okay.
Could I make a friendly amendment to include the Board of Health checking the decibel levels in there?
Noise
That was one of the,
decibels.
yes, that's one of the
Yeah.
police chief's concerns, too.
So, yeah, that way he doesn't have to come back, but if the police chief finally sends us a letter within 30 days saying that he approves, then grant the license.
Is that a motion?
I make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to approve contingent upon the police chief and the Board of Health notifying us within 30 days.
Right.
All right, motion's made and seconded.
Is
Further
30 days good? I mean, it might happen in a week,
Okay.
you know?
Okay.
Hopefully it does. If you go down and see the police chief tomorrow, go see the Board of Health,
Sure.
get the decibels checked out. I'm assuming they'd have to go in there on the weekend.
Yeah, while we're in operation, I
Yeah.
would imagine. 'Cause It's
And,
pretty quiet right now.
And I'd go see the police chief and just sit down with him and say, what are your concerns? And, you know, explain to him exactly what you're doing, and then he can send us a letter, and that way it saves you from coming back a month from now or whatever.
Yeah, I'm more than happy, you know, if it requires that, I'm just down the street, so.
You know, so any further discussion on that?
No.
Bob, Rick, sound all right?
Yep,
All right,
perfect.
motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you
ladies.
very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Yes. To whom do I forward or email the, okay.
Town management.
Address, email address or something like that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Good luck.
Appreciate it. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
We'll be down. All right, last item I have, next to last, discussion on a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for Niles Street. Action discussion, item number 4.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Old Colony Planning Council, at our request, had done an evaluation of that based upon some concerns residents making the request of the board. And as you can see by their summary, that it does qualify based upon the parameters for a commercial exclusion. The Board of Selectmen, does require a vote of the Board of Selectmen and ultimate approval of the Department of Transportation. So if the board so votes, we would submit that vote to the DOT with the backup data that's referenced in the letter to the board. OCPC would supply the backup, all the backup data to the DOT for their evaluation. Presumably, they would approve it based upon the board's request, because the data does support the current parameters that the DOT, has laid out. So, again, it's essentially the board's pleasure as to whether or not you wish to move forward at this stage.
Questions from the board? Any comments, motions?
I'd make a motion to, we're submitting a request to DOT for a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion on Niles Street. Is that the correct?
That is
I second that.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous vote. Town managers report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a few brief items. We did meet the requirements for our application for the green community status. October 31st was the deadline, and October 31 it was submitted. Now, again, it wasn't as close as it seemed. There were just some minor details to wrap up. Over the course of the next several weeks, we know that there'll be some follow-up information I'm sorry, I'm getting my state acronyms, they're jumbled in my brain, but DOER will be requesting of us, I'm sure, to fill in a few question marks that they may have, but we've worked with Old Colony Planning Council, who served as our consultants on this, and they worked hard to help us out here, so, through their DLTA program. So, So again, we were successful, and again, Dory in particular worked very hard over a period of time here to make sure we got that done. So if it fails, I'm blaming her. That's been the setup here the whole time, so just so we all know. And West Abington Hall, as I note here, the asbestos remediation was complete, and the demolition permit has been pulled, and I know that there's been contact as recently as today, I think, in terms of what the timetable is. I don't know if,
Yeah, they're actually thinking of Wednesday of this
is
week.
it to begin the actual demolition. So I know there was a waiting period with the asbestos evaluation had to be submitted to the state for, and there was a 30-day waiting period, so it was held up quite a bit there, so. And our electrical aggregation program, we did have about 580 people who did opt out at this time for the first round, but we, of almost 6,000 basic service customers, that's pretty strong. So just as an aside, so that's as moving forward. And finally, the health agent position, screening committee we distributed 14 applications to them, and most of our committee has reviewed and submitted back to us their recommendations for interviews. We're trying to narrow that down to 3 to 5 potential interviewers, of people to interview. So this week, we hope to have that crowd ready to go. So so that's where we stand at this point, so.
Okay, thank you. I think I need to apologize to the board and to the members of the audience, because we started a new thing with a public comment. It's not at the end of the meeting. It is in the beginning of the meeting, and I forgot all about it because I'm
Jack
so used
Bailey
to-
sat here for the
So
whole meeting.
hopefully, okay, good. Woof, that was a close one. I would've got the wrap there. But, so no public
You're at
comment.
the end of the parade.
No.
Nice.
No, right after the horses. I'd like to see on the agenda for the next meeting, action on the surplus land committee's recommendations. So the board can maybe try to move some of it forward to, actually, I don't think it requires town meeting vote, does it? It just requires us,
Town meeting gave us the authority to.
right, there's surplus land now, and if we wanted to, as a board, I'll provide the documents. There's 2 lists. There's one that I'd like to send to the Conservation Commission to see if they think that they're worthy of being conservation properties, and the other list, we can go through it. I'll try to get all the details to you folks ahead of time so you can look it over. If you have any questions, you can contact me. And that goes hand in hand with the West Abington Hall land. That's one of the surplus land. And I know we had some questions on the amount of acreage up there. I think it's 3.84, but that includes the park. But maybe we can get some better maps to see if there's any, I think some board members had questions as to whether there's some buildable lot up there. So the purpose of the surplus land committee, by the way, is not necessarily to make money, but it was to get a lot of the properties back on the tax rolls, so there's income coming in from that. When's our next meeting? December
11th.
December 11th. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to put on the agenda?
We had talked about Abington Cam coming.
That's right.
Giving us an update.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I was reading something else, but you asked for a plan for West Abington Hall?
Yes, for the
Yep,
property.
right, that.
And
And,
I think there'll be executive session at our next meeting too,
Yeah.
my understanding.
And is there any plan that anyone knows of the center school and the, I know that's a school building, but I'm just curious as to how much land is there with the Murphy Field?
I can get all that for you.
You know,
That's all in the,
Okay,
in the documents.
okay.
And I will provide plot plans for some of the ones we have questions on, if that's all right.
All right. And then we're gonna discuss how to dispose of them, or how we're gonna.
If the board, what the board
Okay.
wants to do, what action you want. I mean, I think most of them were recommended to be sold off, you know, and there's some notes to abutters, because some of the properties would only be, you know,
Yeah, I know up on,
would only want to be bought by, but I know we have some people off Diane
off
Circle.
of Diane, yeah,
Yes,
there's some
and-
people up
and
there.
a lot of that property was, I think that we recommended to go to conservation, about half of it to conservation, and then the other half, but I really don't think there's many lots. It would be mostly to the people who live next door to
Right,
expand their
yeah.
yard.
Yeah.
And that would be,
And
that
some
would,
people have asked me about.
right,
it.
and that would be the purpose why, to try to get it back, you know, we could tax revenue for that,
Right.
so.
Okay.
Anything else No, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.